Welcome to Just Relationships, the show that offers you concrete ways to make your relationships better. Whether it's your boss, your spouse, your children, or your friends, the quality of your relationships in life directly affects how you feel about yourself and the success you achieve. Your host, Dr. Duffy Spencer, a psychotherapist, telecoach, author, and seminar leader, will interview top experts to help you learn to manage this essential part of your life. And now, here's your host, Dr. Duffy Spencer.
Greetings to you. Do you have feelings? Well, you might answer, well, of course, everyone has feelings. Yes, that is so true, and yet we live in a feeling-phobic society with many people suppressing their feelings and winding up being numb. And then on the other end, we have people who we would call very sensitive to their feelings. And we want to look at the positive aspects of that, and we're going to look at empathy, and we're going to look at empaths. And I am very pleased to introduce to you Dr. Judith Orloff, who is an MD psychiatrist and author, and she wrote a book called Thriving as an Empath right now that we're going to be looking at, and I have interviewed you, Dr. Orloff, on your book, on the, I'm sorry, the name of it, the Survival Guide for Empaths. And this book, Thriving as an Empath, is actually a daily reader. Every day brings one page of fresh insights for empaths and how to not only survive but thrive as an empath. So welcome, Dr. Orloff.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so first tell us what an empath is, and I know in the previous radio show we had on Just Relationships, which was, I think, either a year or two ago, you were sharing that you yourself was an empath.
Yes, I'm a psychiatrist. I'm also an empath, and so I combine my traditional psychiatric skills with being an empath, which means someone who is intuitive and open, but tends to not have the same filters up that other people have. And so as an empath, I take on the angst of the world or the stress of the world in my body unless I practice the self-care techniques I talk about in Thriving as an Empath in order not to do that. And so the gifts of being an empath, being intuitive and open and deep and loving and wanting to help others and humanity. But the downside is if you take on too much from the world into your own self and you get exhausted or you overhelp and become a martyr. And so I wanted to, I know. That's a big thing, especially over the holidays.
Oh, for sure. And being a martyr doesn't make someone attractive. People actually tend to resent martyrs.
Well, that's a good point. And it also doesn't help anything. If you take on your friend's pain or your spouse's pain, physical or emotional, it won't help them.
Right.
And empaths often have the instinct of just wanting to suck it all into their body to take away other people's pain. And that's why I wrote Thriving as an Empath, to show people how not to do that and still be loving and caring, but not become a martyr.
Beautiful, beautiful. So you had also written that there are more empaths in the world, that as the world becomes crazier, nutsier, more stressed, whatever you want to call it, there is an increase. Is that so?
I'm seeing that everywhere on my book tour. As I'm traveling around the country, talking about Thriving as an Empath, and hearing people's experiences, and especially with the added stress of what's going on the global scale, that's affecting sensitive people so much because there's so much to deal with all the time that they feel exhausted, and they're becoming more sensitive than they ever have been before, and they don't know how to handle it. So this book is perfect right now. This time is perfect to learn how to counter what's going on in the world. Otherwise, it can seem extremely overwhelming.
Extremely overwhelming, absolutely. So when you talk about self-care, and I tend to think of it as radical self-care, that's the term I like to use, especially if we're talking about women, because women get that taboo of being self-care equals selfish. And by the way, what are the statistics on that in terms of gender? Are there any?
In terms of self-care and the attitudes about it?
In terms of empaths, are there more female empaths than male? Is there?
Yes. At least the ones that are verbal. I have a group on Facebook called Dr. Orloff's Empath Support Community with over 15,000 empaths in it. Dialoguing about various empath topics in the books, and most of the people who comment are women. And often there's a comment, where are all the men here? And then the men will start responding saying that they listen and they gain benefit, but they don't feel as comfortable to comment.
Oh, okay, because they think they shouldn't have so many feelings, that it's something to do with toxic masculinity, that they're not supposed to. That's sad. I find that very, very sad.
Yeah, so they say that they've been bullied as little boys, and they've been put down as crybabies and overly sensitive, and when they wanted to go to the woods and write poetry versus playing, on the football team, they got made fun of. And so some men carry a lot of that around, so even as adults. And so it's hard to really express their sensitivities and know they could be strong and powerful and sensitive all at once. And that's why the self-care practices are so important for men as well as women, because we have to deprogram ourselves from those old, toxic, untrue beliefs about sensitivity and empathy. The most attractive men I know are both sensitive and strong. They're not just macho men or men in their heads. Somebody who stays in their head, is very dry. It's not very attractive. There's no energy flowing there except for intellectual. And so part of being an empath is how to inhabit your whole body so that you can have that to give, and you could tap your own empowerment and not just stay up in your head. It's very painful and lopsided if you're just in your head rather than listening and attending to your whole body.
So very true. And this is Dr. Duffy Spencer. We are WHPC, Just Relationships. I'm interviewing Dr. Judith Orloff, who is an expert on empaths and wrote the Survival Guide for Empaths. And today we're talking about thriving as an empath. And I can attest, Dr. Orloff, that your book, which you so graciously sent me, is just chock full every day. You turn to any day, and you see titles like Rediscover Your Playful Self, Feeling Seen, Growing Younger, Laughing, Independence versus Codependence, No More People Pleasing, Be a Rebel for a Day, Permission to Unplug, Passion, Play, Abundance, the difference between intuition and fear. I mean, you have a way of writing that each of these is one page, and yet they are what I would call simple profundities. They are very profound and yet simple and highly digestible in the morning with tea or coffee or your smoothie or something else.
Right. People are reading the book before they go to work, and with their coffee, so they can set the tone of the day in the right the right tenor. You want it to be positive, and each self-care technique is meant to practice all day long. Just have that day, have January 1st be devoted to new beginnings and how you can create that. Yes.
Practice all day long, and every day is a new beginning. Thriving as an empath, a daily guide to empower sensitive people. So tell us about your online. Can people be part of that huge network?
Absolutely. You could go to my website, drjudithorloff.com, and the book, and there's also a journal that's there called the Empaths Empowerment Journal, to work through a number of empath-related issues and be your authentic self. So the Thriving as an Empath and the Empaths Empowerment Journal go together, where you read about a topic and then you write about it. And my the Empath support group is on Facebook, and it's called Dr. Orloff's Empath Support Community. And anybody can join, but I need to approve people as they come through. So it's, a process of making sure everyone in the group is ready for the group. And it's a beautiful way to network and to hear what other empaths are saying, because empaths are often isolated and they don't have anyone in their sphere that are as part of a community. And so on my website, I wanted to offer this community and, a place for empaths to come together and be their true selves.
And Dr. Judith Orloff, you actually have brought that term into the language.
I think so.
Yeah,
so
that's huge. That is really, really, really big. And I find as a psychotherapist that a lot of my clients are familiar with the term even before I introduce it. And when I do, oh yes, they've heard of it. So I'm a man.
Yes, it's so true. Oh. It's just a wonderful feeling to be able to, have brought it into the zeitgeist. So now that everybody knows what it is, there's so many empaths coming out of the closet and everywhere. I met a guy just recently who was an MMA fighter, a mixed martial arts fighter, who was an empath.
Oh my goodness!
I know he's an empath. God bless him. And I've met everyone from different walks of life who are saying, I'm an empath, and I have, a typically alpha male, man's man, fighter guy say I'm an empath. Like, good for you, bravo. It makes me so happy.
Oh, I hear it in your voice. Yeah. And you've talked so much about and to live in a and world rather than an either or a but yes, and.
Exactly.
So to be sensitive and assertive.
To be sensitive and assertive, and there's an entry in the book on no as a complete sentence. Learning how to say no in your life.
Right. So
a positive no. No, I'm sorry, I can't go out tonight because I need to be alone.
Right.
No, but to say it in a positive way. People associate no with negativity.
Right.
And that's not how I mean it. It's saying it with love, but saying it, getting it out of your mouth so you're not always doing things you don't want to be doing and becoming exhausted. As thriving as an empath, what that means is that you're really smart about how you use your energy. And sometimes that means saying no to things. It just has to be. And empaths are often overly polite and too nice. And they become martyrs. And I bring this up in hopefully in a loving way, and you're receiving it in a loving way, because it's something to deal with in yourself if you identify with that aspect of being an empath. As you have to learn how to set boundaries, and that's what this book is about.
So true, to be able to say no, which is especially hard for people who are very sensitive. And I just want to mention the word androgynous because it's not in the vernacular. And yet that's really what you're talking about. And studies have shown that androgynous people, andro from male and GYN Guinness as gynecologist female, that the word encompasses the best qualities of males and females. And interestingly enough, androgynous people have the highest self-esteem of all. I'm sorry that it's not in language. There is a book called The Androgynous Manager, and people do vote overall when they look at the qualities they want in a manager. If they don't know the word, they're still really choosing the androgynous manager who has both of these, the best of males and females. So
yes, and women have male and female in them.
Right.
And men have male and female. It's learning how to work with that. And being an empath is often stereotypically associated with female.
It is.
But
yes.
it need not be, because it's a beyond any kind of sexual identity. It's a human trait. It's a human aspect that if we tap into it and expand it, we can, embody the best of humanity.
Embody the best in humanity. So we would not have survived as a species if we didn't have empathy, if we didn't have intuition, as you say, if we didn't have altruism, as well as the competitive side of us, the more aggressive testosterone kind of side of us. So go ahead.
Yeah, I've spoken at Google on empaths and empathy and energy vampires in the workplace, which the book also deals with. And so the engineers who are heady and intellectual, many of them are also empaths. And so you need to, it's not stereotyped to any gender or job or age. It's just a human experience that some people are empaths. Not everyone is an empath, nor do they have to be. It's just something I'm focusing on in this book and in my life's work to support all those sensitive people out there who've been put down and marginalized.
Put down and marginalized. Would you say the polar opposite of the empath would be the sociopath?
Yes, or the narcissist or the psychopath.
Right.
And those are people who have empathy deficient disorders, meaning they're not neurologically wired to have empathy as we know it. And so part of the self-care techniques that I present include learning to identify narcissists and sociopaths, learning strategies, how not to be manipulated and hooked into them, which is a very important skill for an empath because there's often a toxic attraction between empaths and narcissists that needs to be brought up to the surface so everyone is aware of it and knows how to deal with it. Yeah, it's a very important theme in empath empowerment. Yeah.
That's huge, Dr. Orloff. So, a toxic attraction, my goodness. So I can see how the two dovetail, and as I tell my clients and students, we're looking at the extrovert marries the introvert, the sloppy person marries the neat person, the spender marries the saver, that there is something to people finding their opposite, so to speak, so the rocks in my head fill the holes in yours, and vice versa. And in some ways, you can't get away from that. You have to learn to cherish the differences and look at diversity as a positive thing, and each grow into more of what they admire in the other, rather than put the other down because they're different from one. Would you say? Yeah. But when it comes to be a toxic attraction, so to look at all the signposts for the narcissist or the sociopath or the psychopath, and what would be some signposts?
Well, from the selection for identify a narcissist, you need to look at the traits of a narcissist, and they include lack of empathy, self-absorption, everything is about them, When you talk about yourself, they go back to themselves because they don't want to really listen to your emotions. They might put on a false front in the beginning and seem like the most wonderful person in the world because that's what they can do is put up this false front. But the minute you challenge them or don't do things according to their program, they become cold, withholding, punishing, or gaslight you. So that's the short version. But I'd like people to read more about it because this is really important to get.
Yes.
And in your life, you need to identify healthy relationships versus these toxic ones. But narcissists can be like a wolf in sheep's clothing, so you don't recognize them right away.
Right.
So that's why it's important to get the basic traits of a narcissist and identify them and deal with them appropriately. And when you bring it into consciousness, then you can be in charge rather than just kind of falling in love with this wonderful person and finding out they're an abuser. You know, you don't want to keep having that relationship happen.
Right.
And there are ways of preventing it.
Yes, so true. And when we look at general stages of relationships, from the honeymoon stage to the power struggle stage to the ally stage, that there is for everyone some sense of when there is commitment, when there is intimacy, when there is a sense of, okay, we are a couple now. People let their hair down, and the power struggle stage starts, and that is, we want to look at what is the normal realm, and then the toxic realm that you're talking about.
Yes, I mean, there's inevitably, growth and conflict in a relationship. But if you have somebody else, they have to have a heart. If you have to be with someone, they have to have a heart. They have to have empathy. Otherwise, you can't successfully get through any stage. Because
Yes.
it just becomes about power struggles where the narcissist wants power over the empath, and the empath wants to heal the narcissist, which, they think their love can heal the narcissist. And it's just not true, not if they're a full-blown narcissist. And so the bottom line is you have to find somebody who's not a narcissist to be in relationship with. Otherwise, it's impossible. You can't have a healthy relationship with a narcissist. It's just impossible because they don't have the empathy that you need for the healthy relationship.
And I'm remembering so many years ago, decades ago, that Christopher Lasch wrote a book called The Culture of Narcissism. And and it's and I think, frankly, that there are a lot of narcissists around. And it's actually kind of, if not celebrated, but expected. And, Americans tend to value extroverts more than introverts. And people who are outspoken, who speak up for themselves, and all of this. So it can be quite confusing, would you say, Dr. Orloff?
Well, I think the quiet people are getting more recognition and power now.
Yes.
Things are changing. The quiet, sensitive people, the loving people, the caring people, the humble people. These are the values that really need to arise up, in our society and in ourselves to honor them for the amazing qualities that they are and not walk around with shame, as I did when I was a little girl, thinking I was, quote, too sensitive.
Yes.
And I needed to get a, quote, thicker skin, and that I wasn't somehow okay the way I was, that I had to, become this extroverted, person who fit into the mainstream, which I never was. I was always introverted and went on my own path, the side path. That's just who I am. And so now I'm being an outsider. So now, I love that about myself. But as a child, it's not so easy. But, what I'm offering people is to surrender that shame and come into your empowerment as empaths.
That's a wonderful phrasing, surrender that shame. And I'm wondering, is there a direct correlation between introverts, extroverts, and empaths?
Well, I write about that. That's an interesting point. I think most empaths are introverts, but they're also extroverted empaths. Those who like socializing and small talk more than introverts do, and like, being in a social sphere. However, they still absorb the emotions and stress of others into their own bodies, so they must decompress after any kind of social interactions so they can find their center again and, not take on anything from the group of people they were with. So that just, you have to take your alone time and meditate and center and breathe and come back to yourself after social interactions.
Yes. I consider myself both an empath and an extrovert. So, yeah. So, and here I am a psychotherapist as well. So,
right. But sure, that's beautiful.
Yeah, the way I handle it is I have such respect for people, and I just know I don't try to bite off more than I can chew. I say I can do what I can do in one session, one therapy session, and then know that my clients are going to do their work in between sessions, whether they process it actively or be in the back burner as they're dreaming or whatever it is, that they'll figure it out for themselves in between sessions. And that's how I do it. So I consciously do not take on that kind of burden of responsibility.
Right. That's beautiful, but that's a good boundary.
Yes, and that's the thing. That's the kind of thing we are trained in as therapists, but the average person is not trained in this. So we only have a couple of minutes, Dawn. I am so excited, everybody, to be interviewing Dr. Judith Orloff, that you gave us an interview on just relationships and such a famous person, and people can also actually have contact with you and have telesessions. Are you still doing telesessions or no?
Yes, I am. I'm doing via Skype or Zoom and also by phone, and you could find out about my individual sessions on my website, drjudithorloff.com.
Yes, so that's Dr. no dot, no period, Judith Orloff, ORLOFF.com. So we're looking at a website, we're looking at a Facebook page, a empath empowerment support group, and telesessions along with bibliotherapy to read the survival guide for empaths and Dr. Orloff's latest book, Thriving as an Empath. You'll give yourself a big treat. Thank you so much, Dr. Orloff.
You're very welcome.
I hope you come on Just Relationships again.
Thank you.
My pleasure. And this is Dr. Duffy Spencer saying goodbye for now and wishing you great relationships.